All right, Cade, let's start off with the big question. Why was Arizona State the right place for you?
Yeah. So my dad played there back in. He was there from I want to say '85 to '88. So having him have played out there, it was really cool. And when I left Marshall, I really just wanted to contribute to a bigger school because I felt like I had the ability to do that. And so, my last year, figured might as well try it. And then, Arizona State reached out without knowing. My dad had played there, and it was just kind of, the whole perfect thing.
Obviously with your dad as a guy who wore the maroon and gold, what was your kind of impression of ASU over the course of your years? You've been at a couple spots in your collegiate career, but just what was the Sun program just kind of in the back of your mind over the course of your early years?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I grew up being from Oklahoma, Central Standard Time. You had to be up till 9, 10 p.m. waiting for games to start growing up. So I always was kind of following ASU along, even when I was at other schools, seeing how they were doing and all that. And obviously, this past year I got to watch a good few games after our season ended.
Or some of the things that really jumped out to you in watching those Sun Devils? Maybe perhaps not even knowing at the time that it's going to be your future stop.
Yeah, I mean, obviously pulling for them over Texas, being from Oklahoma, you hate everything about Texas. Every school in Texas, you hate them. So I was already going to cheer for ASU, obviously, but then against Texas, had to cheer for them. But, it was just really fun watching them that game. I had a few buddies over to watch that, and then I was watching the Big 12 title game actually before we kicked off the Sun Belt title game in the locker room.
You mentioned, of course, following in your dad's footsteps. What does that personally mean to you to kind of don that maroon and gold that your dad did a couple decades ago?
Oh, it's awesome. So my dad, he passed away a little over 2 years ago now. So being able to represent the same team as him, being able to hopefully, God willing, wear the same number as him, just would mean the world to me in that.
And of course, your future special teams coach and Charlie Regal, and throughout the process of getting to know this program and ultimately determining that it's the best spot for you. What kind of jumped out to you about Coach Regal?
Yeah, so him and Coach Nudo are they're both right to the point. They don't try to sell you on anything. They're how they just shoot you straight, right? What they say is how it is, and I always really appreciate that as a recruit because some coaches, kind of sell you on a dream, and then you find out that they got 4 long snappers in the room, or something like that, where it's just they're trying to make it seem like it's a great fit when it's really not.
So as somebody who's kind of been at a few stops throughout your college career now, and landing in Tempe, what are some of the lessons that you learned? Obviously, some time at the JUCO level. So also, it's some power conference teams as well. So, what were some of the lessons you were able to take away that you think are going to set you up for success in your final season?
Yeah, I'd say JUCO taught me, how to work hard when it's really not fun. Because, you're in the middle of Kansas, and I love Hutchinson Community College till I die. That place gave me everything they had. I gave them everything I had. But it's not always fun playing junior college football. So that kind of taught me how to, really work hard when it's not fun. And then NC State kind of just taught me, it taught me a great lesson that at this level, if you're not always on point, it's not going to work. You have to show up every day. Put your best foot forward. Sorry, and really execute every day. And then Marshall really just kind of brought the love of football back to me. Football is supposed to be fun, and I had a lot of fun playing this year.
So, how did you get into long snapping?
So my dad played. He was with the Bengals, and I want to say he tore his Achilles, and so they're like, well, after he had rehabbed that, they're like, well, if you can long snap, we'll keep you on the roster. And he couldn't do it. So he was like, pretty much from the time I got to high school, he was like, you're going to learn the long snap because, you can make a roster doing that. And then kind of everybody else grew, got bigger than me. I was like, well, it's not looking good for me playing D end at the next level. So I'm going to try something else out. And then and ended up being decent at long snapping. I found a coach up in Chicago that was a long snapping coach and started working with him and really honed it in and got pretty good at it.
Obviously it's a position that like kind of like when you're doing it well, you're kind of anonymous, your name's not called, and one of those type of things. What are some things about long snapping that maybe you've learned to love over the years, and just kind of being in that position that is obviously of extreme importance for the special teams units, but just kind of one that doesn't necessarily maybe show up in the box scores?
Yeah, well, like you said, my dad said if you're a great long snapper, no one's going to know your name. That's just how it is. But it's really just, it's awesome. You're still playing football, even though it's maybe not D line or quarterback or anything like that. But, you still get to play football. And football is fun. It's the best game God put on earth. But I've learned that, people may not see something like not matching laces, but that is a huge factor if the kick goes in or not. Like if, I snap it and the laces are back when the holder catches it, then, that kick just got a lot harder. And no one else will see that but me and the kicker.
Well, that kind of leads perfectly into my next question, because like obviously maybe the average fan in the stands just thinks and sees a snap, but obviously special teams, especially the specialists, are so details such a critical factor of success. What are some of the things about you mentioned the laces there, some of the things about the art of long snapping that perhaps a fan in the stands might not just typically understand?
Man, I think a typical fan might not even understand that they keep a designated long snapper on roster, to be honest. But it's just like they're not going to see it unless it goes bad. And I've had some teammates throughout the years say, "Why do we have a a guy that only long snaps?" It's like, well, do you want someone else to go out there and try it when that's their second position? And if you're playing D end and long snapper is going to fall to the side. But I mean, what would I say to a fan about long snapping? Is just it's maybe not physically the most hardest, the hardest position, but technique wise and kind of mentally, it's really hard because you've got that one rep and you might not get another throughout the day. Because off the top of my head, there was 2 games, maybe 3 this past season where I got less than 2 reps, 2 or less reps.
So obviously making that trip out to Tempe in the desert, as an Oklahoma guy, what are some of the things you're looking forward to about living out here out west?
Warm winters. Being in West Virginia, we got 30 inches of snow in a week this past winter, and that was miserable. I mean, that was horrible. But I'm really just looking forward to everything about it. Beautiful scenery. Really, it's something brand new to me. I've never lived out west. None of my stops have taken me out there.
You mentioned football is fun a couple of times already, and Kenny Dillingham is the guy who repeatedly says his players have the most fun in the heart of any group in the country. What is it like knowing that your future coach is somebody that tries has at this point proven success in balancing having fun but also putting in the grind?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of fits perfectly with my mentality when it comes to football. Because sometimes you can kind of forget that this is supposed to be fun, and that's something I thought I did a pretty good job of this past year, was enjoying the hard parts of it. We would have conditioning at 3 p.m. in the stadium out here because we wanted to be ready for it. And moments like that, it's hard to remember that, hey, this is supposed to be fun. But I always crack some jokes with the punters, something while we're between drills to make it a little more fun.
So this fall, when you're running out through Tillman Tunnel past the Tillman statue onto the same field that your dad played on a couple decades ago, what do you think the thoughts going if you're going to be running through your head at that moment?
Snap fast. It's the only thing I think the whole game. Just snap fast.